Wonderful. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to our event this evening around nutrition and eating well after a loss with nutritionist Joanne here. My name's Emma. I'm the community manager of Untangle, and we're here to support anyone through a loss and help you rebuild your life by providing practical, emotional and social support all in one place. We know how hard nourishing yourself properly after a loss can be, especially when it's hard to gain the motivation and energy to prepare food. So in this session, Joanne will provide us with an eating routine that you can adapt to your needs and to help support your energy and focus levels throughout the day. During this event, if you can keep yourselves on mute and feel free to pop any questions in the chat box, and then Joanne can read those kind of as we go along. But we'll also have time at the end for a Q&A, so don't worry if you don't have a chance during the session for your questions. We are recording this session and we'll post this recording on the website tomorrow, and I'll also send it around in an email. So if there's anyone that you know who might benefit from this, you can send it over to them. So yeah, to introduce Joanne. So Joanne is a nutritional therapist with over a decade of experience working with individuals and organisations to support energy, mental health and resilience. She believes in simple and practical changes that have a big impact on how you feel, and is full of tips and ideas on how you can incorporate these changes into your daily routine. So yeah, looking forward to hearing more about this evening from Joanne. And yeah, without further ado, I will hand over.
Thank you very much. Hello, good evening, everybody. So yeah, I think Emma's done a pretty good introduction to me. So I'm a nutritional therapist. I'm based in Cardiff, and on a day-to-day basis, I work with people one-to-one and I support them to make kind of step-by-step, practical, sensible changes to their diet, to their lifestyle, to help them achieve their goals. So I'm not a fan of kind of fad diets and these kind of changes where we throw everything at it but can only keep it up for a week or two because we're tired and we're hungry and we're miserable. So it's about making kind of steady changes that you can keep up for the long term. And when I'm not working with people one-to-one, I do go into organisations and I run a lot of workshops around stress, mental health, female hormone health, and things like energy levels. So tonight we're talking about energy and we're going to touch on stress as well. So the way that I tend to do it is explaining, first of all, why we feel so tired or how stress affects us in terms of what it's doing to our body, and then talking about how we can eat and what we can eat to support ourselves around that. So I will try to give you lots of kind of food ideas on the way through. I'm not going to give you like a prescriptive menu plan to follow because most people find that quite hard to do anyway. I will send a kind of energy balancing menu plan over at the end of the session, so you will have that. Follow it if you want to, or just use it for ideas. Any questions, chuck them in the chat box on the way through. If I can see things popping up, I'll stop and answer them on the way through, and then I'll leave a kind of gap for questions again at the end. So let me share my screen. And let me do this slideshow from the beginning. There we go. So I'm going to start off talking about energy because actually everything we can do to address energy has an impact on helping us to manage our stress better as well. So our stress isn't going anywhere. It's about how we manage that will enable us to feel better. So I talk about energy quite a lot because the huge majority of people I work with agree that they don't have as much energy as they want. They don't have as much energy as they used to have. And I think we see low energy almost as a weakness, something that we have to kind of push on through. Like, we should feel full of energy. We should be able to carry on. We should be able to do all of these things. And actually, sometimes low energy is just a signal that we need to slow down, and it's a signal that we quite often ignore. Now, when you have experienced a loss, as all of you have, that is exhausting in itself, and then having to deal with everything around that is also exhausting. So if your energy is low, that might actually be quite normal. So it doesn't mean there's anything wrong, and it doesn't mean that you have to kind of push on through and keep on going. Low energy, when it's ignored, can be the starting point for other issues. So it can trigger poor mental health. It can trigger lack of concentration, not being able to focus, not being able to kind of motivate yourself. And if we carry on kind of pushing through that, we end up relying on things like caffeine and a biscuit and all of these things that give us a little pick me up. So we set out at the beginning of the day with really good intentions, but then as our energy drops and we start kind of feeling like we need a little pick me up, we end up grabbing all the wrong stuff. And we're going to talk quite a lot about why that happens. So in terms of tiredness, everybody seems to feel the same. And this is just an average person on an average day, never mind when you've got other things thrown into the mix. So the average adult in the UK said they felt tired for almost 3 hours a day. So that's quite a big chunk of your waking hours. 43% of us say that at times we feel tired from the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment we go to sleep at night. So if you ever, I think when I was running my business and doing freelance work for a company I used to work for, and both my kids were small, I definitely had days where I woke up in the morning and I just kind of mentally ticked off in my head all the things I had to do before I could crash back on the sofa again. So if you have those feelings, not every day, but some days, then you're not alone. Sleepless nights is listed as the main cause of tiredness. Early starts, perhaps not a great shock, but perhaps what we don't think about is our diet. What we eat has a huge impact on our energy levels. So if you have a tendency to yo-yo diet, so if you put yourself on a diet and you say, right, I'm not allowed sugar, I'm not allowed, carbs, I'm cutting out bread, and I'm not going to eat any takeaways or any ready meals, and you sort of have this beautiful, amazing, clean diet, but you only have it for about a week and it's not sustainable because it was never realistic and you're not enjoying it. So you go back to what you were doing before. But then after a while, you think, oh, I'm being really unhealthy. I need to put myself on a diet. And you flip-flop from one to the other. That, in general, will lead to feeling more tired. And also a generally poor diet. So people who eat more kind of fried foods, takeaways, ready meals, kind of sugary snacks, packaged foods, tend to have less energy than people who eat more whole foods. So your fruit and veg, your kind of lean meat, or your fish, drink more water. So it's kind of stating the obvious, but sometimes I don't think we think about it. What you put into your body has a huge impact. So if you're feeling tired, it might be your body's way of telling you to slow down. So put all of the good stuff in, have a good plan in place, and then see what you're left with. So give yourself the best chance of having good energy levels. And if you still feel tired, then you know that that's your body signaling that you need to slow down rather than the impact of your diet on your energy. So when we're talking about energy, carbohydrates are our main source of fuel. So your body will use fat for energy as well, but it's not such a readily available source of fuel. So if carbohydrates are available, that's what your body is going to use. And I think over recent years, we've become a bit anti-carbs, like they get blamed for everything in the same way that fat used to. Carbs are not the enemy. But particularly when we're thinking about weight loss or weight maintenance, which I know is not what we're talking about this evening, we're often eating more carbs than we need for the level of energy we're expending. So they're our main source of fuel, but sometimes we're eating enough to run a marathon when actually what we're doing is sat at our desks or sat on the sofa. So it's about eating the right ones in the right amount to fuel the level of activity that you're doing. So if we take it on a really basic level, what you've got are simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates. All of those carbohydrates break down to something called glucose, which is a sugar, and that's what your cells use for energy. The difference in the different carbohydrates is how they break down to glucose, and how they break down to glucose has a really, really different impact on our energy levels. So the simple carbs, those are the ones we kind of know are not very good for us. So white bread, white rice, white pasta, white potatoes, but also all your sugary foods. So cakes, biscuits, pastries, desserts, those kind of things. And the complex carbs, which we kind of know are better for us, are we jump to grains. So wholemeal pasta, wholemeal rice, oats, but it's also lentils, chickpeas, beans, nuts, seeds, fruit, veg. They all come into the complex category. Simple carbohydrates break down very, very quickly. Complex carbohydrates break down very, very slowly. So I'm going to show you this little graph that kind of shows you what it does to your energy levels. So they all break down to glucose, which is a sugar. That sugar goes into your bloodstream. Your body wants to maintain a fairly level amount of sugar in the blood at all times. And we produce a hormone called insulin to help keep that in check. If you think of the level of sugar in your blood as being your energy level, that's a kind of a good, it's not an exact comparison, but that's the nearest that we've got. So if you think you wake up in the morning, your blood sugars are going to be, and your energy levels going to be sort of fairly low because it's the longest period of time since you've eaten anything. We do have a kind of natural hormonal rhythm that kind of gets us up and going and out of bed in the mornings. So if you were to start the day with some of those simple carbohydrates, which is quite often what we do, because mornings are rushed, we might feel tired, we might not feel like kind of getting up and getting on with the day. So we grab 2 slices of white toast or a bowl of cereal. The energy from that food, the sugar from that food releases really quickly, and our blood sugar levels and our energy levels spike. But your body doesn't want all of that sugar in the bloodstream. So insulin comes along, takes it away, not very discerning, takes the whole lot away, and you end up with your blood sugars and your energy levels coming all the way down here. And that's kind of mid-morning, you might feel a bit hungry, not concentrating very well anymore, feel like a little pick-me-up, and you maybe have a cup of coffee and a biscuit. And then your blood sugar and your energy shoots up, and then it comes down. You eat something else, it shoots up, it goes down. So you've essentially got this kind of roller coaster through the day. Now, the problem with that is it doesn't just affect your energy levels, it's also going to affect your mood, your ability to concentrate, your focus, because your brain is using about 20% of the energy you take on. So if you don't give your brain the right fuel at the right time, it's not going to function as well as you want it to. So these sort of fluctuating blood sugars are really linked with low mood, and those peaks, those kind of high blood sugars, are linked with anxiety. And that's because anxiety is the first part of our stress response. It's what alerts us to there being something wrong. And one of the first things that happens when we're stressed is that we release sugar from storage. So high blood sugars are linked with those feelings of anxiety, which we'll talk about a bit more when we talk about stress. What you want is a nice kind of steady line like this green one. It's never going to be like dead straight, but you want your blood sugars to stay within these parameters. This is going to keep your energy levels even. It's going to keep you focused and concentrated. It's going to help your mood to be a lot more balanced. So say you were to have something like some scrambled eggs for breakfast, maybe with a slice of toast. Your energy levels are going to rise, not as much, not as quickly. They're then going to come down kind of relatively slowly. If you eat something again, then they'll go up and come down. If you don't eat, so if you have breakfast, so if you're particularly busy or you're unmotivated, you know, a lot going on in your head, then you might find that you kind of skip lunch, don't have snacks, maybe have some tea and coffee. This line is going to carry on coming down. So even if you've had like a super amazing breakfast, if you then don't eat, you will eventually still end up down here. So it's really important to eat regularly through the day. So as well as having those kind of complex, slow release carbohydrates, you need to eat regularly. So big gaps in your meals is going to cause those crashes in energy, where you're then going to find it hard to kind of motivate, concentration, focus, mood, all of those things will go. So if you want to keep that nice kind of green line, I'm going to give you the rules to follow, and then I'm going to talk about some, breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner suggestions, just a kind of couple for each one. So if you want to keep your energy levels stable, you want to focus on complex carbohydrates. So the brown ones, the ones we instinctively know are more healthy, they're going to release their energy slowly, and they're going to keep your energy level stable through the day. With regards to wheat, there's something about wheat as a grain, probably because we only eat it in fairly processed forms like bread, that releases its energy really quickly. So even when it's wholemeal, 2 slices of wholemeal toast can cause your blood sugars to spike as much as a Snickers bar. Now, doesn't mean we should be going off and having Snickers for breakfast. There's still more benefit to wholemeal toast than there is to chocolate bars. But You just need to be aware that if you had 2 slices of wholemeal toast and maybe you put a bit of jam on that or a bit of honey, you're going to get quite a big spike and a drop, even though it's marketed as a really healthy food. Definitely better than white bread. But what you want to be doing is thinking about combining all of your carbohydrates with protein. So at every meal, you want to have a small amount of protein. And we'll talk more about protein when we're talking about stress and mood. But in the terms of energy levels, protein will slow down the rate that you burn that carbohydrate. It'll kind of mix all together. It will help to reduce cravings, and it will help to keep your energy levels stable for longer. So protein is meat and fish, eggs and dairy. If you're vegetarian or vegan, or if you're vegan, it's lentils, chickpeas, beans, nuts, seeds, tofu. Those are your main kind of plant-based sources. So not all of those are things you're going to want to have for breakfast, but some with each meal and each snack through the day. Eating regularly, which I already mentioned. So you might, if you recognize yourself in this kind of up and down roller coaster, mid-morning, mid-afternoon slumps, think about eating something small round about every 3 hours to start with, which might mean breakfast, morning snack, lunch, afternoon snack, evening meal. It's not about eating more, it's about having smaller meals more often. And then if you feel like your energy becomes more stable, you can try taking the snacks out and see how you feel. Don't take them both out at once. Maybe try taking the morning one out. If you still feel good, energy stable, try the afternoon one. But a lot of us have quite a big gap between lunch and dinner. So sometimes you might need to kind of pop that back in. If you're hungry in the mornings, don't try to put off having breakfast. Have something within an hour of getting up. If you're not hungry in the mornings, you don't need to kind of force feed yourself breakfast. It's absolutely fine. Some of you may have come across fasting. It's become more and more popular. Having a longer period of time overnight where you don't eat can be really beneficial in stabilizing your energy levels, but only if you're not hungry. You know, if you're really hungry and you're just pushing it, that's not going to do you any good. And make sure you have a plan for breakfast. So if you're not going to eat till 10 in the morning, that's fine, but think about where you'll be. You know, are you working? Do you have meetings? Do you have things to sort out? Is eating at 10 o'clock going to work with that schedule? Do you need to take something with you? Do you need to have something already prepared? So it's really important to have a plan in place in order to get that to work. You want to avoid too many stimulants, so things like caffeine. You want to avoid too many white foods. And if you like it, include cinnamon with your diet. So cinnamon is a spice that's been shown to help insulin function and to help keep your blood sugars level and your energy levels level through the day. And there was actually an experiment done on McDonald's apple pies. So they are really high in sugar. You'd expect a massive blood sugar spike, but actually you get a much smaller one because the cinnamon actually kind of tempers the rise. So cinnamon you can add to porridge or yogurt, but you can also add it to savory foods. So stick it into soups, stews, casseroles, curries, chilies, anything like that. So it's not about eating a certain amount every day. It's more about having adding it where it actually works. So in terms of what that means for what you would actually eat, it's things like, if you like eggs for breakfast, that is brilliant. So you can have just a protein-based breakfast with scrambled, poached eggs, omelette. You can add some spinach and mushrooms and grilled tomato to that if you want and if you have time. Scrambled or poached eggs on toast if you just need to be a bit quicker. Things like Greek yogurt or any kind of plain natural yogurt with nuts and seeds and fruit is a good option. So yogurt's quite a good sort of high protein food. If you are vegan, then going for something like a soy yogurt, as long as soy is a food that you can eat, would give you that alternative. Really good quality protein shakes can work well. So you're looking for a low sugar option. And adding, you know, maybe again some spinach, some berries, things like that into there. Lunches, if the weather carries on being as it is today, then it feels like we're heading into salad territory. But we do have a tendency to make really kind of boring salads. It's almost like we put ourselves on salads when we feel like we need to lose weight, and then we never make them very interesting. It's like a punishment meal. But salad can be lettuce, cucumber, tomato, but it can also be rocket, spinach, watercress, carrots, peppers, radish, olive, beetroot, avocado, red onions, spring onions, so sweet corn. So make sure your salad is big and colourful and interesting, and then have some protein with that. So some chicken, some tinned fish, some boiled eggs, things like chickpeas or kidney beans, a nice kind of olive oil based dressing, maybe crumble some walnuts over the top or some seeds. So make it big, make it interesting. If you're out of the house every day, then you can actually sort of prep 3 salads in a row. So it doesn't take 3 times as long, and it just means you're only getting your tubs and your knife and your chopping board and everything out once. Excuse me. So prepare 3 salads at once, pop them all in the tubs, maybe give yourself a different protein, put the olive oil in a jar rather than over the top, because otherwise it's going to go a little bit soggy. So bulk prep is a really good thing to do when you're lacking energy, when you don't have much time, when you've got a lot of stuff going on. And then evening meals, things like, I'm a massive fan of, really simple food, like some pan-fried chicken or fish or tofu, and then a great big pile of steamed veg, but using then something like some garlic oil or some chili oil or some herb oil to drizzle over the top. So you've taken something that's quite plain and quite simple, but you've made it a lot more interesting just by giving it a dressing. We tend to dress our salads and then completely ignore our vegetables, but actually vegetables are better with a bit of a dressing on there as well. Or cooking one thing that will then see you over a few meals. So chili is a great example. It can be a lentil chili or it can be a meaty chili. Sorry, excuse me, I've got a really sore throat today. And it's I've done quite a lot of talking, so it's obviously catching up with me. So something like a chili, you can have it in a bowl with some guacamole, maybe a few nachos. And then the next night you could have it on top of a baked sweet potato. And then the next night you could get some peppers, scoop the seeds out, or chop the tops off, scoop the seeds out, stuff the chili inside, and then roast those in the oven, maybe have a salad on the side. So you've cooked once, and then you've had it in 3 slightly different ways, and you're getting all of that kind of protein, you're getting all of that veg, which is going to be brilliant in stabilizing your energy and also in supporting mood. If you don't want to have it every day, you can kind of freeze some of it, have it every other day, whatever works for you. So finishing off the energy section, I just want to talk a little bit about water. So we get told all the time, need to drink more water, 6 to 8 glasses a day, 1.5 to 2 litres. No one ever kind of says why we need to drink water. So we are 60 to 70% water, our bodies, our brains. Every single thing that your body does on a daily basis needs water in order to happen. So we literally can't live without it. And if you are mildly dehydrated, it can lead to fatigue, poor concentration, lack of focus, lack of motivation. So all those things we've talked about. So again, it's about ticking off the things you can. So get your energy balanced by the regular eating, the complex carbs, the protein. Make sure you're drinking enough water, and then see what you're left with. Are you still feeling tired? If you are, quite likely that is your body telling you to slow down and have a rest. The amount of water you need will differ. Like if the weather's hot, or if you've got the central heating on, if you're doing a lot of exercise, all of those things mean you'll need more water. If you eat loads of fruit and veg, that's going to mean possibly you need less water because you've got a lot included. So judging it by your thirst is a really good way to do it. But I always advise, drink a glass of water as soon as you wake up in the morning. Take a bottle or a glass to bed with you, keep it on the bedside cabinet. Because by the time you get downstairs, you'll probably forget and put the kettle on, because that's just a habit that we have. So keep it on the bedside cabinet, drink it as soon as you get up. So it's the time when you're most likely to be a little bit dehydrated, and when you can kind of just sort of kickstart the day. Put a bit of lemon juice in it, some mint leaves, some slice of ginger, whatever it is that will make it more kind of palatable for you. So not everyone likes drinking lots of water. Twinings now have fruit infusions, which are like a cold water tea bag. So it gives you a flavoured water, but without any of the kind of sugars or sweeteners. Equally, you can make herbal teas and let them go cold. Fizzy water is fine. You probably don't want that as soon as you wake up in the morning. So does anyone have any questions with regards to that kind of energy section before I move on and talk a little bit about stress? It's all very quiet. So, oh no, something has popped up, hold on. Is sugar-free squash okay? Yeah, absolutely. And I think like 99% of squash these days is sugar-free. So if I were going to be a perfectionist, I'd say water was better. But actually, in terms of hydration, which is the point, squash is going to hydrate you. So tea and coffee are not great for hydration because they're diuretics, so they make you wee more, but squash is fine. The only downside is it's got sweeteners in. But if you will drink a pint of squash and you won't drink a pint of water, then I would go for the squash. What if you're pretty much addicted to caffeine and get a headache if you don't? So with regards to caffeine, so caffeine's not all bad. I'm married to an Italian, so there's plenty of ways to make coffee in our house, and it's something I enjoy, and I'm not at all against it. So sometimes we are using it as a prop, we're using it as a crutch to get us through the day because we are so exhausted. So if you're drinking too much, so caffeine in the form of tea and coffee has lots of antioxidants and good stuff. Caffeine in the form of things like Red Bull doesn't have anything good about it. So if you're drinking, I don't know, 7 cups of coffee a day, cut it down to 6, give yourself 4 days to a week for your body to adjust to that 6, then cut it down to 5 and give yourself another 4 to 7 days to adjust. If you cut it out altogether, you will get headaches, you might feel lightheaded, you might feel nauseous, dehydrated. There's a lot of side effects you can get from just cutting out caffeine. I mean, some people can go from 7 cups to nothing and not even notice. It really does differ. So cut it 1 cup at a time. And you can still drink the water even if you're drinking the caffeine. So what can work is if you get like a really nice, like a brightly coloured cup or a glass, put it next to the kettle. Every time you put the kettle on to make a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, have a little glass of water, only like, 150 mils, 200 mils. And then that will kind of mount up over the day. Probably does mean you're going to go for a wee quite a lot because you've got the combination of the tea and coffee with the water. But that's what I would suggest for that one. So if you look in the dictionary, stress is described as a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. So I'm sure this is something you can all relate to. It essentially means when we have more to do than we can naturally cope with. And most of us are at a level where we're just about coping with the stress in our lives, and then something in this, in your cases, a loss is going to be the thing that tips you over the edge. So you're just about coping, but you're not able to cope with another thing being thrown at you. I'm just going back to check the last question because I think it was related to the caffeine. 1 cup of coffee per day for me. I do enjoy extremely strong tea though, currently about 5 mugs a day. I do consume enough water though. Is that sufficient? So I would say one thing just to be mindful of with 5 mugs of tea is that tea has tannins and it can affect your absorption of nutrients. So it can affect how much vitamins and minerals and stuff you're getting out of your food. So drink it away from meals would be my best advice. If, for example, we know that iron supplements, if you take your iron supplements alongside tea, you don't get the benefits. So drinking enough water is giving you that kind of balance you need. Maybe try and cut it to 3 or 4 cups of tea rather than 5, or swap some of them to decaf. So keep them strong, keep them in, but swap them to decaf. And the other thing I would say is that sadly, as we get older, our tolerance for caffeine declines. So if you've always had a cup of tea after your dinner in the evening and it's always been fine, but suddenly you're not sleeping well, there are many reasons you might not be sleeping well, but take that last cup of tea or coffee out and see if it makes a difference. Don't assume that that's nothing to do with it because you've always had it. It could just be your tolerance changing. Okay, lovely. So in terms of have we invented stress, I don't mean us personally, I mean the world that we live in. So My old GP used to say that most of his patients had Western world syndrome. So there was nothing specific wrong with them, nothing that he could prescribe, but they just had too much going on. They had more than they could cope with. He moved to Australia. That was his way of coping with Western world syndrome. So I'm not sure if any of you ever saw a TV program called Tribe. It was on TV probably like over 5 years ago. And the presenter was a man called Bruce Parry, and he was an adventurer and an explorer, and he would travel around the world and he would live with different tribes around the world. And he would take on their diet and their lifestyle for the period of time he was living with them. And he stayed with the Nenets people in Siberia. And it's a really harsh environment. So they were reindeer herders, they were semi-nomadic, they traveled hundreds of miles in -40 with their homes on their sleds, kind of pitching their tents wherever they went. And when he asked if they found their life stressful, the interpreter couldn't translate the question because they didn't have a word for stress in the same way that we do in their language. So the Western world constantly being connected, working longer hours than we've ever worked before, using things like technology to relax when actually, as far as our brain's concerned, it's quite stimulating. Not sleeping as much as previous generations. We are the only species that willfully delays sleep because we've got artificial lighting and technology to keep us awake. So in that sense, we are more stressed than perhaps another culture that we look at with quite a harsh lifestyle because of the world that we live in. So I want to explain what happens when you're under stress so that you can then understand how you can eat in a way that supports your body with that. So you're not going to take your stress away, but you can put your body in a better position to deal with the stress that's being thrown at you. So when we are stressed, we have a fight or flight response, and it's a response that we've evolved with back in the days when most of our stress was physical. So it is a very, very physical response that gears us up to fight or to run. But most of our stresses are psychological. They are not physical, but we're still having a really physical response to a psychological stress. And that's why stress will impact every kind of aspect of your body. It can make you feel exhausted. It can impact your sleep. We know that it affects our heart health in the long term. So when we're stressed, we have something called our sympathetic nervous system, switches on instantly like a light switch. We produce adrenaline, we release blood sugar from storage to give us the energy to fight. Our heart rate and our blood pressure go up to pump that around the body to where it needs to be. And we are literally kind of primed for action. So if you ever feel slightly kind of on edge and jittery when you're stressed, that would be why. We've got a backup system, which is our adrenal glands, two little glands on top of the kidneys at the back, and they produce stress hormones like cortisol, which will carry on pumping out their hormone. The adrenals carry on pumping out their hormones even a couple of hours after our stressor has passed. So animals have the same stress response as us, but they use their stress response appropriately. It's not kind of triggered all day, every day by stressful life events and traffic jams and deadlines and that sort of thing. So if you imagine you are a zebra strolling around on the plains, having quite a nice day, and then you spot the lion on the horizon. So going back to what I said earlier, where high blood sugars are linked with anxiety, as soon as that zebra spots the lion, the hairs on the back of its neck stand up. It feels that anxiety, and immediately that fight or flight response kicks in. It releases sugar from storage, so blood sugar levels rise. So that blood sugar rising is linked with that feeling of anxiety. Cortisol goes up, adrenaline goes up, heart rate and blood pressure goes up. As that lion gives chase, the zebra's got everything it needs to run and to escape from that lion. So we're going to imagine on this day, the zebra got away. Good day for the zebra, not such a good day for the lion. The zebra will then go back to calmly eating grass on the plains. It's going to eat a lot more than it would have done before because it needs to replenish that energy. So if you ever have that feeling that at the end of a particularly stressful day, suddenly you crash and you're starving and you start opening the fridge and opening the cupboards and looking for whatever food kind of first jumps out at you, that's a really kind of natural physiological response to what has happened. As soon as those hormones dampen down, you realize that you're hungry and you need to eat. One of the ways that you can head that off, so if you go back to what I was saying about energy levels, where you need to eat regularly, if you haven't eaten all day, you've got these hormones that have maybe carried you through. If you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling anxious, if you're busy, when those hormones crash, if you haven't eaten anything, that's like a double whammy. You are going to be absolutely starving, and you'd need a huge amount of willpower to stop you from grabbing all the wrong things at that point. So eating regularly through the day can just help your body to deal a little bit better with that stress that's being thrown at it. So going back to the complex carbs, the protein, etc. The other thing with the zebra is, once that lion has gone, that zebra relaxes. It just goes back to what it was doing before. But as humans, we spend a lot of time worrying about what just happened. So in the zebra's case, that would be, whew, that was close. That lion nearly got me. Did I go the right way? I mean, what if the lion comes back? What should I do if the lion comes back? Should I go the same way? Should I do something different? So we spend a lot of time triggering our stress response with worries about what's already happened that we can't change, and what might happen in the future, but then might not. So we don't spend time in the present, which is where we would feel calm and relaxed. So the opposite to that fight or flight response is rest and digest. And that's where we are designed to spend most of our time. So our stress response is a really beneficial thing when we trigger it appropriately, but the world we live in kind of tips us into it fairly often. So moving on from stress to mood. Trauma, illness, stress can all trigger us into poor mental health and low mood. And we're not designed to be happy all the time. We are designed to experience a range of emotions. But when that low mood is affecting your ability to kind of get on with your life day to day, that's when it becomes a problem. And again, it's about kind of doing everything you can to support your mood and seeing what you're left with. So we know that people who eat more processed foods, so more kind of, take junk foods or fast foods, as in the picture, more kind of processed foods, takeaways, ready meals, more kind of packaged sugary foods, poor quality fats like salami, sausage, bacon. People who eat more of those kind of foods consistently report lower mood than people who eat a more whole food kind of fresh fruit and veg sort of diet. And there was a really interesting study that was done on students to look, is it because our mood is low that we eat these foods, or is it eating these foods that makes us have a low mood? Now, I think it's, more likely to be a bit of both. But what they found was they looked at students arriving at university, they looked at their mental health when they arrived, they got them to track their diets. The students that ate more processed junk food were more likely to develop poor mental health than the students who ate better. So there is a causal link. What we eat can impact our mood. There's absolutely no doubt that once your mood is low, you're more likely to eat more of those foods. So you just find yourself in this kind of vicious circle. And I think stepping out of it sometimes is just taking one thing at a time. I'm going to change my breakfast, ditching the white toast, and I'm going to have eggs. I'm going to reduce that caffeine by 1 cup a day. I'm going to start the day with a glass of water. So just start with that one thing and move on from there. So caffeine, which we've already touched on, for a lot of people, it is an anxiety trigger. It can make us kind of jittery and on edge, and it can make us kind of clench our teeth. Doesn't do that to everyone. We've all got a different tolerance. But if caffeine ever makes you feel slightly anxious and on edge, that's a sign that you need to cut back on it. And it's a sign that we quite often ignore because it's such a social norm to kind of put the kettle on that we just carry on doing it. So protein, I've already talked about protein as balancing energy and reducing cravings, but protein is also our building material. So we think of it as building muscles, but it also builds neurotransmitters. So serotonin is the one that we think of as our happy hormone. There's another neurotransmitter called GABA, which is our anti-anxiety neurotransmitter. So it builds those neurotransmitters, it builds hormones, immune cells, skin cells. So it's our building block for everything. We found it in all those foods I mentioned earlier. And with particular regard to serotonin, it's not just, or tryptophan is, so when we eat protein, it breaks down to little bits called amino acids. Tryptophan is one of those, and that's what we use to make serotonin. And it's not just about mood, it also helps regulate our sleep, which is really important, because if you don't sleep well, then you're going to wake up more prone to being stressed. You're going to wake up low in energy, and it helps to regulate our appetite. So that kind of coming home, searching through the cupboards is less likely to happen. I'm aware it's got really dark. Just give me 1 sec. I'm just going to go to the light switch. There we are. That's like I was fooled by the sunny day and thinking that the daylight was going to last. One thing that's really important to get that tryptophan to get into the brain, to make that serotonin, eat that protein-rich food with a complex carbohydrate. So the complex carbohydrate works to almost sort of open the gates and push that tryptophan to where it needs to be. So that might be some of the examples I gave earlier. So you could have a stir fry with loads of veg, some wholemeal noodles, and some turkey or some chicken or some tofu. You could have some pan-fried salmon with a jacket, sweet potato, and then some steamed green veg. You could go for something like the lentil chili, where you've got the protein and the carbs together in the beans and the lentils. So just thinking complex carbohydrate, so the brown kind of healthy carbohydrates, and a protein food together at dinner is really beneficial in terms of mood. And then I want to talk about fats. So oily fish, I know, is not everyone's favourite thing, but if you like it, try to eat more of it. I'll give you some alternatives if you don't. So oily fish has a fat called omega-3. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory and really supportive of our brain health and hormone health as well. So omega-3 is just things like, it's been used in multiple studies where people are depressed, and it's been found to improve mood. It's been used as a supplement in young offenders institutions, and it's found that when young offenders are given omega-3, there are less disciplinary actions and generally kind of better behaviour all round. It has a huge, huge impact on our brain and our mood. And when I talk about brain health, it's not just about mood. It's not just about whether you're depressed or not. It's also about that kind of focus, concentration, memory, just your ability to kind of do these day-to-day tasks. So your best sources of omega-3, oily fish. So as a general kind of rule of thumb, any fish that isn't white is an oily fish. So it's salmon, tuna, mackerel, sardines, pilchards, trout, anchovies, all of those kind of fish. With tuna, when it's tinned, there's something about the tinning process that sucks all those good fats out. So it has to be fresh. Salmon, mackerel, sardines can be fresh, they can be tinned, they can be vacuum packed. And what you want to aim for is eating that oily fish 3 times a week. You might not want to have it for 3 evening meals, because that might that might feel like it takes over your life. So maybe some smoked salmon with scrambled eggs and spinach for breakfast. Maybe some of the vacuum packed mackerel with peppercorns with a beetroot and salad for lunch. Maybe some tinned sardines or tinned mackerel on a couple of crackers or a slice of toast as a snack. And then you've got your kind of pan-fried salmon or tuna, maybe with a big pile of stir-fried veg for dinner. It goes really nicely with Asian flavors. So maybe marinate it with some soy sauce, ginger, garlic, chili, lime juice, that kind of thing. If you do not like oily fish, then your best plant-based sources of omega-3 are flax seeds and walnuts. Now, it's a slightly different form that your body will need to convert. So you and there's not as much of it. So you need to eat them every day. So a teaspoon of ground flax seeds and a handful of walnuts. Ground flax seeds you can stir into a soup, a stew, a casserole, a curry, porridge, yogurt. So you can add it without really noticing you're eating it. Walnuts you can crumble over salads, over the top of a bowl of soup, or just have them as a little snack. Things like avocados, olive oil, small amounts of coconut oil. It's not designed to be kind of eaten in large amounts. Omega-3 rich eggs, nuts and seeds, they are all good sources of fats to include in your diet as well. You want to avoid trans fats, so margarine and associated products, and saturated fats from animal foods. They're absolutely fine. You just don't want too much of them. You don't have to eat kind of meat and dairy every day. Just going to check what's in the chat. Are ground flax seeds okay? Yeah, so I really like ground flax seeds because whole flax seeds are so tiny that even if you chew your food really well, they can quite easily sort of pass through unchewed. So ground flax seeds just avoid that problem, and they're really, really easy to add to things. They're also giving you a bit of fiber, so they're generally good for digestive health, and there's a huge link between gut health and brain health. And then just quickly finishing off in terms of mood. So you need your protein, you need your fats, you need your energy levels to be balanced. And then B vitamins, vitamin C and magnesium are, every vitamin and mineral is important for managing stress, but these three are particularly important. They support those glands at the back, the adrenals that I mentioned, to produce those stress hormones. B vitamins are also involved in your energy production cycle. Magnesium is our relaxing mineral, so it can help to relax your brain, it can help to relax your mind. One thing that ticks the box for vitamin C and magnesium is dark green veg. So getting a portion of dark green veg, whatever you happen to be eating, just chuck a dark green veg on the side. And if you fancy giving it a go, kale pesto. So if you steam your kale for maybe 4 minutes and then whiz it up with olive oil, garlic, lemon juice, salt and pepper and some cashew nuts, your huge bag of kale becomes a little pot of kale, and then you can just have a spoonful alongside whatever you happen to be eating or use it as a dip. So it's a really good way to up your green veg without having to kind of chomp through half a plate of kale. You also get magnesium in nuts and seeds, particularly almonds and shellfish. Vitamin C, almost every fruit and veg, particularly the dark green ones. Weight for weight, red chilies is the highest source of vitamin C, but you're generally not eating like 100 grams of those. And then B vitamins is whole grains, nuts, seeds, meat, fish. So generally kind of protein foods. Another great way to get magnesium is through magnesium flakes, which you can buy in big bags in Home Bargains, if you have a Home Bargains close to where you are. And you put a cupful into the bath, and then you can relax in the bath, absorb the magnesium through your skin. If you're struggling with sleep, that's a really nice thing to do in the evening before bed, but make sure your bath is warm, not hot, because hot can then make you too hot and that can disturb your sleep. So magnesium flakes in the bath, because they do help relax your mind and relax your muscles. Caffeine we kind of already talked about. So drinking caffeine can trigger anxiety for some people. For other people, it's not going to make you feel stressed, but if you're already stressed, it can kind of heighten that stress response because it's a stimulant and it causes that sort of adrenaline production. And then we've got sort of 10 minutes or so left. Doesn't matter for me if we run over slightly, but I'd love to know if you have any sort of general questions. If you think, if you can kind of think, I think that's where I'm lacking, I think that's what I need to change. So where could you start to make a change? What one thing could you do? Sometimes doing everything is overwhelming and results in you doing nothing at all. So choose one thing, work on that, and then see if you can build on that from there. I kind of skipped over that last slide because it's just my links if anyone wants to stay in touch, but I'm really aware that you can't click on them from the slide, so I'll just put them in the chat. It's just my sort of website and Facebook page, etc. So I'm just going to pop those in there. I think I'm lacking everywhere, but going to start with hydration, reducing caffeine and eating regular meals. Yeah, and I think, pick one of them. So maybe hydration is a good one. So just commit to having a glass of water when you wake up in the morning, and maybe do that for, a week and let it become a habit, and then reduce your caffeine by 1 cup. And then continue that process until you're where you want to be. And then with the regular meals, I would say, I think I've left that one to last because it's the trickier one to do. Not, it doesn't mean that you can't do it, but it depends what your starting point is. So probably needs a bit of planning and organization. Even if you have the same breakfast every day, that's fine. If you have the same snacks every day, that's fine. But just write yourself a little plan for the week so you know what you're having. And whenever you write a plan, look in your diary, because there's no point in saying, well, I'm going to have this on Wednesday lunchtime, and then realizing that actually you're out on Wednesday lunchtime and there's no way you can have that. So make sure your plan actually works kind of realistically with what you are going to be doing that week. So yeah, one thing at a time, particularly when you're overwhelmed and you have lots of stuff going on. Any other thoughts about sort of where people might be lacking, what they could change, where they'd like to start after they go away today? I tend to wake up several times during the night and eat, so reduce the intake at night. Yeah, so that's an interesting one. So I had a client a few years ago who used to do that, and I don't know for you sort of when that started, but for him it started when I think he was at college in America, and he just got into a habit of doing that in the night when he was like 18, 19, because he had no kind of routine and he wasn't eating properly in the day, and then he really struggled to kind of kick that habit. So what we did with him was exactly what you've just said. Rather than eating like 2 or 3 times a night, maybe just eating once, and then changing what he was eating so they were sort of healthier options. The other thing I would say is make sure you're eating enough through the day. If you are waking up at night and you're hungry, it could be that you're not eating enough through the day, and it might, if you also feel kind of lightheaded or anything like that, it's also worth going to get your blood sugar levels checked. So if your blood sugar levels are dropping really low, that can be enough to wake you up in the night. So if it's accompanied by feelings of kind of thirst, lightheadedness, etc., go and check that out. But yeah, eat enough during the day. Try having a protein-based snack about half an hour before you go to bed. That's another thing. So something, I know it's a bit random, but something like a boiled egg. So that can be enough to kind of settle your blood sugar through the night and stop you waking up. I'm lacking with planning, usually too tired or emotional to make good food choices. So I think I should start prepping ingredients for dinners or lunches to make it easier. Yeah, absolutely. And do something like that lentil chili, because you can make a massive chili and then have it in 3 different ways. So you've cooked once and then it's there. And one of my other favorites is just a bit of a meze. So some falafel, some olives, some cherry tomatoes, some carrot sticks, some hummus, some wholemeal pita bread. Sometimes you can get those lovely little spicy peppers stuffed with kind of feta cheese or ricotta. You can get sometimes the vine leaves that are like, quite fragrant with the rice inside. So just buy them, nothing to prepare, and then have them in the fridge, and then you just take them out and put them on the plate. So that's a really kind of nice, simple option. One of my breakfasts at the moment, which I know seems a bit weird, but I've been trying to totally move away from carb-based breakfast. So I've been doing roasted veg and eggs, so mainly courgettes and tomatoes. So what I will do is chop a great big pile of courgettes and tomatoes. I'll pop them into tubs, maybe 5 tubs, and chuck them in the fridge. So all I do in the morning, I tip that tub onto a baking tray. I make a kind of gap in the middle, drizzle it with olive oil and salt and pepper, and crack 2 eggs in the middle and shove it in the oven. And that would be then cooked 180, 12 minutes. So it'll be cooked before you're kind of, showered or whatever else, had a cup of coffee. So, and yeah, with regards to planning, I would just say start with one thing and then build up, because otherwise it can become overwhelming. So I don't eat badly all the time, but I have done recently. More water and herbal teas, less tea and coffee over the last 2 weeks have seen sleep pattern and quality improve. So that's great. If you've made some changes and you've seen your sleep improve, then you can see that kind of clear link that when you do things differently, it has a positive impact. Hate to be that person, but a lot of the foods you're suggesting are expensive. Any tips? So I'm not sure kind of which ones, if there's anything kind of specific you were referring to, but I would say if you focus on fruit, veg, pulses, so if you go for more plant-based proteins like lentils, chickpeas, beans, so things like a lentil chili would be like a good economical option. Things like a chickpea curry instead of a chicken curry is a great option. So eating meat and fish less often, but things like tinned mackerel, tinned sardines are really cheap. So they're less than £1 for a tin, although I say that it's probably gone up because everything's just gone up. So just kind of going, yeah, tinned fish, pretty cheap, lentils, chickpeas, beans, fruit and veg, getting veg in season, only buying the veg you need, getting a local kind of fruit and veg shop would be a good idea. And then with things like nuts and seeds, which I agree can be expensive, places like Lidl, they're cheaper. Just getting the kind of bags of mixed nuts from there are a really good option. Frozen fish tends to be cheaper as well. It can have like a stronger, like an almost like a more fishy taste, but I would, yeah, go for frozen options. The same with kind of meat and veg, anything that you buy frozen. So things like blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, much, much cheaper if you buy them frozen. So I hope that kind of, I hope that answers that. Okay, so thank you so much for your time and all the valuable points. Pain and heartache are terrible and so unbearable. What am I going through physically? Can you suggest 1 or 2 things I should be doing each day, please? So I would say physically, what is happening is that your body is in that kind of fight or flight state rather than the rest and digest state. So you're constantly triggering that kind of stress response, and that is exhausting. And that will then be sort of contributing to low mood. So if I were going to suggest kind of 1 or 2 things to do each day from a diet point of view, I would say, number 1, glass of water as soon as you wake up in the morning. Number 2, having a more protein-based breakfast rather than a carb-based breakfast. So start at the beginning of the day, and then you've kind of set yourself up well from there. And in terms of things to do physically, and you know, just to be clear, I'm not an expert on the kind of grief side of things, but in terms of kind of mood, things you can do physically are getting outside every day, and hopefully the better weather helps with that. So I would say go for a walk if you can. If that's not possible, then at the least kind of sit in your garden, sit on the front doorstep, and it kind of serves a couple of purposes. And one is that daylight, particularly morning daylight, kind of helps to kind of set your clock, set your circadian rhythms so that you are able to sort of, it's how we distinguish kind of daytime and nighttime and when we need to sleep. But also the sun from late March onwards will be able to produce vitamin D when we expose our skin to the sun, and vitamin D is really beneficial in terms of you know, mental health as well as kind of skin health, immune health, and lots of other things. So yeah, glass of water when you wake up, protein-based breakfast, and from a non-nutrition point of view, I would say get outside every day, even if it's only in the garden to drink your morning cup of tea. Something else has popped up. Oh, Emma's just said, I assume you've seen that. We've got a great event on physical symptoms of grief, which might help. Lovely, that's great. Does anyone else have any kind of questions or thoughts? Does everyone know kind of where they're going? So we've got something that they can take away and put in place. I realise I've given you tons of information, so it's taking the bits that you need and leaving the bits that you don't. No, it's all gone quiet in the chat. I'm not sure if you wanted to say anything to finish off, Emma.
Yeah, so we are just after 7, so yeah, maybe that's a good point to finish there. But yeah, thank you so much to Joanne for that session. Like, I personally found that really helpful, so hopefully everyone else did as well. And yeah, some great tips there. I've got my water here, so I need to definitely drink drink more of that and carry on doing that. So yeah, thank you so much for everyone for coming this evening. We're running a schedule of events around grief and wellness and well-being. So yeah, if you join Untangle, you can see the upcoming events. I'll just pop the link in the chat here for you. I've also got Joanne's link that she posted there as well. So yeah, you can find her on her social media. Is it Instagram and Facebook? They're the best places to find you, Joanne?
Yeah, so Instagram and Facebook, I'm Cardiff Nutritionist, so I'm easy to find. That's also my website, is cardiffnutritionist.co.uk. I am on like LinkedIn and Twitter as well, but not so much. Twitter's no good. I can't fit anything into that few words.
Wonderful. Yeah, and as I mentioned at the start, we'll also send this recording out tomorrow if you'd like to watch it again, or perhaps share it with a friend who might find it interesting. But yeah, apart from that, have a lovely evening, everyone. Thanks again to Joanne for joining us this evening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
We go. So I will, if anyone kind of if any questions pop up kind of after the fact, then people are welcome to email me, and I'll pop an email over to you in the morning with like a handout. So there's lots of like, you know, protein-based snack ideas, protein-based breakfasts, and then there's like a little menu plan as well, which most people don't follow a menu plan, but it's good just for a bit of inspiration and a few recipes. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can attach that to the email that I kind of send to everyone saying that thanks for coming.
I'll pop them over in the morning.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. That was really informative. And yeah, I personally really took a lot from that, so I'm sure everyone else did as well.
Good. Lovely. Well, thank you very much. It's lovely to meet you. And yeah, I'll be in touch tomorrow.
Brilliant. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
You too. Bye.